he's got his own billiard room. Yes, it's what do you call it, Kramer? The billiard room? No. The name. The billiard? Not the billiards. It was... Come on, Rudy, come on. We call it the place to be. The place to be, yes. It's the place to be. Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color. The Grandy Man can. Time to play the game!
Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said.
Why do I want this?
Yeah.
Because I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is now time for the Place to Be Podcast. And now your hosts, Justin Rosero and Scott Criscolo.
Place to Be Nation, what it is. Welcome to another excellent episode of the Place to Be Podcast, and we are all zoinked up tonight because we have a great show ahead. And as always, joining me, the PIC from Norwalk CT, the man whose first girlfriend was named Black Betty. That is Scott Criscolo.
Did you actually say zoinked?
All zoinked up.
Good evening, Mr. Rosero. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, sir. And we do have a very special podcast tonight, episode number 45?
45.
Yeah, episode 45.
50. Oh, we're going to have to wear tuxes while we record episode 50.
Exactly. It's like it's like those prime times before pay-per-views and Gorilla and I'll wear the regular Gorilla sequined paisley one, and you can wear the Bobby with the studded jewels.
We'll have Matt Marotella on this tuxedo t-shirt.
Exactly. You can look like Jameson. Yes. Now, obviously, this is our second podcast of the week. We did our headlines show on Monday. Hope you all enjoyed it. Which means, of course, the other one is the big, shiny fortress of delights and joys. And that is, of course, the Vintage Vault. However, tonight is not your ordinary average Vintage Vault, because for the first time, now we've had guests on our headline shows. We actually had Matt Rotella on a vault, WrestleMania 2, but that was when the vault was a cardboard box, and with Matt on,
that experiment crashed and burned very quickly.
Yeah, pretty much. But since then, exactly. But since then, we have a nice big shiny fortress, which we hold all of our treats and joys of the Vintage Vaults. And tonight, for the first time since the WrestleMania 2 podcast, we have allowed someone to enter the inner sanctum. Justin, why don't you intro them?
And that man is actually one of our original fans, one of our earliest fans, dedicated fan, and in his own words, the biggest mark of the Place to Be Nation. That is our buddy, Jeremy Nichols. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on tonight, guys.
Of course. Now, Jeremy, of course, one of our best commenters, biggest fans, and also a big fan of this show that we'll be reviewing tonight. So he was very excited to be joining us, I believe.
Oh, yeah, big time. This was one of the first. See, I got into wrestling in '92, and this was one of the first videos I rented. So, to me, it's always been a little more special than most people.
Now, Jeremy, we thank you and we welcome you to the Inner Sanctum. However, you haven't been here long enough to see the combination. So, if you just turn your head, let me open the vault safe, the door.
I won't peek. I promise.
Don't peek. All right, Justin, watch him. All right,
I got it.
Okay.
It's actually just your date of birth with your year, 1943.
Your hand,
so.
Well, there's a lot of eights. There's a lot of eights and ones. Okay, so that's. But you have to figure it out. Anyway,
isn't there a BC in there?
All right, Jeremy, you're out of here. Anyway, no, just kidding. Okay, the door is open.
To bring it.
All right, the door is open. Tonight on the Place to Be podcast in the Vintage Vault, we answer a very poignant question, a question that has befuddled fans, analysts, probably a lot of wrestlers, and reviewers alike. And that question is, what came first, the taker or the egg?
It's the Survivor Series, the epitome of tag team competition, as the immortal Hulk Hogan and the Earthquake captain their respective teams of the Big Boss Man and Dino Bravo. Joining up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Haku, Tugboat, the Barbarians, the Hulkamaniacs versus the Natural Disasters. Team captains, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Join up with Coco Beware and a mystery partner, along with the Anvil, Rick Valentine, Bret Hart, versus the $1 million team. Team captains Nikolai Volkov and Sergeant Slaughter. Join up with Tito Santana, Boris Lukov, Bushwhacker Butch, Sato, Bushwhacker Luke and Tanaka. It's the Alliance versus the Mercenaries. Jake the Snake Roberts and the model Rick Martel captain the respective teams of the Superfly, the Warlord, Marty Jannetty, the Mighty Hercules, Shawn Michaels, Paul Roma, the Vipers versus the Visionaries. World Wrestling Federation Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, and Mr. Perfect, lead team members, Texas Tornado, Crush, along with Animal, Axe, Hawk, Smash, it's the Warriors versus the Perfect Team. It's the Survivor Series!
Axe!
If he still did that now, I think it would still be very entertaining.
Oh, I wish he just did it for every pay-per-view ever.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great. You see, I always love the opening of this one in '89 because even if you didn't watch, you didn't look at the box when you rented it, you knew what was coming up. I mean, that's an awesome opening. Most of the openings were just, they throw the title on the screen, maybe a little music. This one was awesome. Like Vince was doing it, and he was on top of it.
And it was right at the peak too. With the, you have all the guys we grew up loving. Plus, you have the excellent team names for the second year in a row.
Yes.
I love the team names.
Yeah, hearing Vince say those was pretty good too. I love like the weird guys. I picture like Vince never even like having any kind of run in or chat with, like Sato. Like the fact that Vince knows him is like awesome to me. Sato.
And obviously that team, he wouldn't need to know Sato much longer because he wouldn't be around much longer. But
Correct.
We'll get to that when we get there. But all right, let us paint the picture because this is actually a very special pay-per-view for me because it is the first one to take place in my home state. The date, November 22nd, 1990, from the Hartford Civic Center in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, that's not my home. That was not my home base arena. My home base arena was the New Haven Coliseum, but that place was way too small for pay-per-view. Plenty of house shows and plenty of Raws as we got to the mid-90s that I went to there, almost 45 shows, but too small for pay-per-view.
One for every year you've been alive. Exactly.
And Gorgeous George actually bought a hairdryer at the salon around the corner from the Coliseum. See, if he's going to throw that out there, usually something really, really good comes at the back end. It's not wasted. You have to remember that. I did not go to the show because this was still when it was on Thanksgiving night. And my mother was like, no, you're going to your aunt's. So my brother, who's 6 years older than me, actually got tickets.
6 years older than you.
Yeah, so he was able to use some of his AARP money, and he went to the show. So the
Chris was actually aging dog years too. So that's like 54 years old.
Oh my God.
Starting early.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and if it was if Derek was on here, we'd already have shut you off. So anyway,
we'd all be asleep.
Show.
If Derek was on, we'd all be asleep.
Matt would be asleep while talking. So anyway, all right, enough of that. Again, Hartford Civic Center, Hartford, Connecticut. First show ever in the home base state of the World Wrestling Federation, although it's a good 2 hours away from Titan Towers. The attendance, 16,000, which is not a sellout. It seats about, I think it's seated about 19.5, so it's not a sellout. The buy rate is 3. And your announcers are the same as we had at SummerSlam, Gorilla Monsoon and Roddy Piper.
No, Vince did SummerSlam.
Vince did SummerSlam. So Gorilla's back after taking the summer off, and he now sits with the Hot Rod, who had a 50-50 SummerSlam. Not great, but not terrible.
Yeah,
we'll see
I think he comes back. Yeah, I think he comes back strong at the show. We'll talk about it as we go. But
again, for those that have the first digipack of the Survivor Series anthology set, this is on there. In fact, you only have a couple more after this, and then the rest are not on DVD. They haven't released the other digipacks yet. We will also let you know what matches are on other DVD compilations. But I'm looking now, and to be honest, there aren't any. So none of these matches are on any other sets, either old school Coliseum video or a DVD compilation. So unless you have the digipack or a tape copy of the actual show, you probably don't have any of these matches. So we will go as we do normally. We'll go even, odd. Let's see. So I will start with I'll do the odd matches. Justin will do the even matches. And, of course, Jeremy will have his comments as well. Our opening match Obviously, you could do a chuckle at this that the the World Wrestling Federation champion is curtain jerking the show.
Yes, but he would also close it out, so I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah, the way that the show is laid out is not that bad. Yeah. But the Ultimate Warriors, led of course by your current World Wrestling Federation champion, the Ultimate Warrior, or as Vince says it, the Ultimate Warrior. Your Intercontinental champion, the Texas Tornado. And the highlight of my life, walk down the ramp, the Legion of Doom, who I did not have to look from afar anymore. They were right in front of me.
Yes, you look at that guy out in the distance with that beautiful, beautiful girl, and you're like, damn, I'm happy for them, but I wish she was with me.
I'm never going to live this down. I'm not going to live this down until they leave in 92, but...
I had dinner with our friend Andy Flanagan last night, and we must have said that comment 8 different times. We kept laughing. It was so funny.
and it's all for posterity on our podcast, so yes. I can't escape it. But you know what?
Creepiness will never be forgotten.
No, and that's okay, because that's if it brings more fans to the show, then that's good. So there's your team there, and the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal. Taking on the Perfect Team, which was the former World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion. Are you still playing it?
You wouldn't stop playing it.
I stopped it.
That's great.
The former World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Champion, Mr. Perfect, and all 3 members of Demolition.
Including Axe,
Smash, and Crush. Now, speaking of Axe, this is it for him. This is his last pay-per-view appearance. He has been at every show since Demolition's debut at the 1987 Survivor Series. Smash and Crush would obviously continue on as Demolition for the next few months. But this was it for Axe. He had a heart condition, which is why they brought in Bryan Adams, a.k.a. Crush, ultimately killing the mojo that Demolition had, although with the Road Warriors there, it didn't really matter anyway.
Well, the funny thing is, he's still wrestling now, isn't he?
Yeah, they wrestle indie shows. I'm sure it's on a much lighter schedule than it was in 1990. But
yeah, who would have thought? They got rid of him back then for having heart issues, and here he is still going. 20 years later?
It is pretty funny, but Crush pretty much picks up most of the slack. The first of many characters he would have over his career. Now, back in the days of tapings, TV tapings, and stuff happening beforehand. Texas Tornado actually comes out as the Intercontinental Champion. Here he has the belt. However, technically, he already lost it on the November 19th Superstars taping. Mr. Perfect won the title back from the Texas Tornado. And so technically, he is the Intercontinental Champion. However, that episode of Superstars would not air until December 15th. So technically, in the pantheon of belts, the Texas Tornado would still be Intercontinental Champion for at least the next 3 weeks until December 15th. So the Ultimate Warrior still obviously very red hot, and but pretty much it seems like it's been a feud. He really hasn't defended the belt much in these few months. It's pretty much been a 6-man tag feud, and you're looking at it: the Ultimate Warrior and the Legion of Doom against Demolition. And then the Intercontinental title feud with Tornado and Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad that his reign was so anticipated and so well set up that it's come to this already. You had the tepid feud with Rude in the summer, and now this. He would get into a much hotter feud, obviously, right after the show. But you figured they could have had something better over the fall. But they had Perfect still busy with Tornado, and then DiBiase was feuding with Rhodes, so there's really no one else on the heel side for him to feud with. What do you think about that, Jeremy?
Well, see, that's where I was confused, because Savage is, I don't want to say he's wasted, but he does a promo later on the show, and it's like, well, why not have him as the team captain, and at least, even if he loses, he's still in the title picture. And clearly, up until the show, Sherry had been, approaching Warrior about title shots anyway. Put Warrior or Macho in this match, make him the team captain. So you've got Warrior and Mach, and then Tornado and Perfect, and LOD and Demolition. And take Axe out. If this is his last one anyway,
right.
It's unfortunate, but why have him in there when you could put Savage in there? And then I would say even have maybe Savage go over as a count out. It wouldn't be an odd sight, especially at Survivor Series, to see the champ lose by count out, because Hogan did in the first one. So they could have done that, and then you got Savage some heat, and they go on to the Rumble, and you don't even need to have Slaughter and Warrior. Slaughter could have still feuded with Hogan. They didn't need the belt, but I figured that tonight, at the Survivor Series 90, is that Mach was really kind of just wasted in the promo. I mean, it was a good promo, but what was the point? Put him in the match, have him work. If you got him on the payroll and he's there and he's dressed to compete, no less, throw him in the match.
The only thing I think of is that maybe he was hurt, because I think we've looked this up before, and I feel like he didn't wrestle actually like a lot of TV matches at this time. So I don't know if maybe he was banged up and they didn't want to have him go on, but I agree with you. They could at least even just kind of hit him on the apron and have him like avoid the Warrior throughout the whole match or something like that. And the other thing too is at this point, I think they were still maybe considering Hogan Warrior for WrestleMania. So I think they wanted to have them together on the grand finale match. We'll get there, but I think they were kind of teasing maybe a rematch for them at this point. There's no way they could have known that they had Slaughter pegged for what they had him pegged for at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't think they could have saw that. Oh, we're going to put Slaughter in the title match. I don't think that was something they had planned.
No, not at all. And what makes it even more bizarre is that Axe only lasts 2.5 minutes anyway, and then Warrior splashes him and kicks him. He's done anyway. So it's
the highlight for Axe was his weird poofy hair he had going on.
Yeah, it wasn't as slick as it usually was. It was almost like what Hawks would look like in '98. It just looked very disheveled and poofy. But so Axe is eliminated fairly quickly. Warrior takes him out with a splash, and then the rest of the other teams, about 4 minutes later, they all get disqualified. Hawk, Animal, Smash, and Crush just brawl to the back, and that's it. So it pretty much goes down to Warrior. It's now essentially a 2-on-1 handicap match. Warrior and Tornado against Perfect. Perfect pins Tornado with the Perfect Plex, which I guess from a chronological viewpoint pretty much sets up what would be Perfect's rematch for the Intercontinental title, even though it technically already happened. But it sets it up anyway. And then Warrior, Perfect once again for the second time this year has to eat a pin from the world champion.
Yeah.
Hogan eliminated him at the Rumble, and now Warrior gets him again with a splash.
This one I'm not as aggravated with, though, because Warrior needed a clean win, I think. Unless in a situation like Jeremy mentioned, if you're going to set up a feud from here, but they obviously weren't. So
right.
I'm fine with Perfect jobbing here.
Yeah, and at least Perfect's a company man, and he'll do what he's told to do when he's told to do it,
right.
And that's, you got to have him,
Yeah, exactly. So Warrior, your world champion, is the ultimate survivor, and he moves on now for the first time in Survivor Series history, and pretty much the only time. It's if I'm correct.
Yeah, it was the only time.
Pretty much the only time in Survivor Series history that there is a grand finale match in which all the survivors, faces on one side, heels on the other, of course. And so the Ultimate Warrior, your World Wrestling Federation champion, moves on to the final match.
And two things on that I wanted to mention, too. It's interesting because obviously LOD and Demolition outside of Axe, they have them get double disqualified all at the same time. So it was clear that they wanted that feud to continue, and we'll get there when we get to WrestleMania eventually. But I still can't understand why they didn't have that match there. Because they clearly still wanted that feud to go on by having if not, they would have had LOD just go over here. But and also regarding this grand finale match, I remember the magazine at the time before the show actually had a cool little not like a bracket, but a thing where you could write in all the winners, and then you had the two grand finale matches at the bottom just to kind of track along with the show. I thought that was kind of cool.
That's pretty neat.
That is pretty neat. I don't remember that.
Warrior's got his white belt tonight. He doesn't have that. What was it? That teal color he had at SummerSlam, I think it was, or
yes. And then he would move on to purple at the Rumble
because he had the white tights here too, right?
Well, he had silver.
Oh,
it was a whole silver thing going on, silver tassels, and he had silver face paint. And don't forget, this is LOD's WWF pay-per-view debut. I mean, they showed up at SummerSlam, but they didn't wrestle, so this is their first pay-per-view match.
Right.
In ring. I think we gave the background to SummerSlam, right, Scott?
Yeah, the background gave it. Yeah, well, that's where the whole my whole Harlequin drugstore love story started. So anyway,
I haven't slept really all week actually since airing.
Most uncomfortable story you could ever go into.
All right, I get it. Bad enough I had to fight this guy over the stupid Heart Foundation, and they were pink. But in any case, guys, I sound like Jimmy Hart at SummerSlam '88. But anyway, all right, so. Let's move on to the next match.
Creepy old man, but anyway.
What, the guy? What, like the one on Family Guy? Anyway, okay. So the opener's done.
Yes.
See, I got to put up with it. It's bad enough I got to listen to the stupid Duggan theme, which I'm sure you'll pull out later. Now I got to listen to LL Cool J all the time.
I'm waiting on that.
Anyway, all right. So the Ultimate Warrior advances and moves on to the grand finale. So now our next match, Justin, involves your favorite guy, which we're zoinked up over, zoinked out,
A lot of my
zoinked
favorite
in.
guys.
Yeah, this is pretty much one of your. This is pretty much your whole team right here.
All right, of course, that team is the Dream Team, captained by the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby, teaming up with Coco Beware and the Hot Foundation, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And their opponents are the $1 Million Team, captained by Ted DiBiase, and featuring the team of Rhythm and Blues, who we actually haven't seen compete yet on pay-per-view, and that's Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine, who's sporting the dyed black hair.
Yes.
They appeared at WrestleMania 6, but this is their first, actually, I think it's their only in-ring pay-per-view appearance as a team, so... And they had a mystery partner that they had been touting for weeks. And of course, I'd say that was a fairly big debut, that mystery partner.
Yep.
Okay, this clip I have actually decided to play ominous music.
Like, what? Somebody's generic.
Yeah, well, I don't know what that was.
Was that like the lawsuit theme or?
I don't know. They were like, I guess they tried to make it Stasi instead of just playing the actual clip. Let's try this one.
Okay.
I like that. It was like from like the Attitude PlayStation game. It was like one of the creative wrestler teams.
Well, you're picking the matches and the stipulations. The random music's playing in the background.
I don't know. I can't find it. Anyway, the debut is of course of the Undertaker, Mark Calloway.
I couldn't find any good clip. Anyway, yeah. So DiBiase takes the mic and he goes from Death Valley, weighing 325 pounds or whatever it was. Yeah. I give you the Undertaker, and then the original of one of his WWF all-time record 15 themes starts here, and my favorite line is Piper going, "Look at the size of that ham hock," and but I remember my brother coming home that night because I didn't know about Taker until that weekend.
All right, so that's the best I could do. It's a little highlight package. But.
Yes, and I remember. I remember. So I remember my brother coming home that night, and the obviously I didn't know about it until that weekend. In fact, I don't even think Superstars mentioned it. I think it was on All American Wrestling that Sunday here in Connecticut. All American Wrestling was on Sundays at noon on USA. That's where they did the package, and my brother said, "Just watch this guy," and he came down the aisle. And back then, the Civic Center had this weird serpentine snaky kind of aisle. It's not straight down the middle, and my brother said the place was hushed, and not in that, "Oh, who the hell's this guy?" More like Jesus Christ, what is that? And it was legit. And it began, of course, over 2 decades of destruction. Who would have thunk? Even my brother said, he goes, this guy will last about 2 or 3 years, and then they'll repackage him, or he'll probably quit or something. And never did.
Yeah, because, typical, WWF gimmick, you don't expect, much to come from it, especially, he's with Brother Love here, of course. He's his manager. We should give the background first, obviously, on the man behind the character.
Oh, yes, of course. Mark Calloway. Oh, go ahead. You can do it.
Yeah, Mark Calloway from Houston, Texas, began his career in World Class in Memphis. Sometimes he was under a mask. Sometimes he was as himself. His first big break came in WCW when he replaced Sid Vicious as a member of the Skyscrapers. He teamed with Dan Spivey under the name Mean Mark Callis. After that, he kind of, bummed around as a solo act for a while. And then in 1990, Vince came calling, and he debuts here. And, of course, he was also brought in to have a role with Hulk Hogan in Suburban Commando. He was one of the evil aliens. And then, of course, Brother Love is his manager here, and Ted DiBiase was the benefactor that brought him out. There's also another fun fact we should get to before we continue with The Undertaker. Over the summer, a new face began popping up on the house show circuit, and that's Dusty Rhodes' son, Dustin. On the 10-13 Saturday Night's Main Event, Dustin was seated ringside to watch his dad take on Randy Savage. During the match, DiBiase and Virgil came to ringside and paid off all the fans sitting in the seats next to Dustin and sat next to him. They started kind of getting in his face a little bit and pestering him as Dustin was trying to cheer on his dad. At one point, Dusty came out, but he got jumped by Savage and taken out. DiBiase and Virgil took that chance to pounce on Dustin, started beating the crap out of him and left him a bloody mess at ringside. It was actually I don't know if you've ever seen that Saturday Night Main Event. I think it's the Oktoberfest one. But the scene is Dustin's just like gushing blood at ringside, and like Dusty's covering him, and DiBiase and Virgil are just assaulting him. On November 3rd, DiBiase challenged Dustin Rhodes. DiBiase said if Dustin could last 10 minutes, then he would win the match. Dustin accepted and lasted the 10 minutes. It's curious. I'll never complain about Coco getting a pay-per-view payday. But I'm kind of curious why they didn't put Dustin in this match in his spot and have him be with his dad. And he's not even at the show, which is even more mind-boggling.
That is really strange. And I think it was more because they needed some fodder for The Undertaker, because Coco would get knocked out in the first, almost minute and a half.
Yeah, but Anvil could have been that.
Yeah, probably. One quick thing about Taker, though, before we move on. He actually, as much as he bounced, and I didn't know this until a few months ago, I had forgotten. As much as he did bounce around as a solo guy in WCW, he did actually have a title match on pay-per-view. It was actually right before this show, a few months earlier, at the 1990 Great American Bash. Mm-hmm. He actually had a U.S. title match with Lex Luger.
Well, that's actually the clip they used to remember. I don't know if you remember the later years of, or I'm sorry, the mid years of WCW, like maybe 96-ish. It was on Saturday Night a lot. They would show these clips of like the WCW guys like in matches against WWF guys that used to be there, and like it was kind of like their big boy play little campaign. And one of the ones was that match, Luger beating up on Mark Calloway.
Right. Yeah. So that was
Jeremy. You just watched the show very recently, earlier today. Did they mention Dustin at all? Really, I don't really recall them doing it at all.
No, they didn't talk about what happened at all, and they didn't mention him by name at all, even. And it was odd as I'm watching it. I remembered that the feud had started just before, and that whole thing happened with Dustin. And I go, well, where's Dustin at? You think at least maybe be in the corner or be a manager role or just something. And nothing happened at all, and they didn't mention him. It's like it didn't even happen. And it was really odd if you didn't watch at the time, because I didn't start watching until 92. I had no idea as a kid when I first watched the Survivor Series that anything had even happened. Right. I didn't know why. All I knew was from SummerSlam when Ted DiBiase took Sapphire. That's it. And all I know is that they're feuding because of Sapphire, and Ted's the rich guy and Dusty's the common guy. That's it. Because they didn't show any clips, they didn't say anything. They didn't even give Dusty a promo to say anything, which I'm sure he would have had they given him the time. I mean, there was nothing, so you didn't even know. And then the Rumble comes, and him and Dustin are teamed up, and you're like, wait a minute, what? If you didn't watch,
yep,
you wouldn't know. You just wouldn't have a clue at all. You'd be clueless.
Right. Well, and the thing too is, this is a weird show overall in that regard. I feel like they don't really show a lot of build up for any of these matches. This kind of go from match to match with the interviews in between, but I feel like they don't really hype a lot of the feuds, which is odd.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the combinations were just for, just to kind of fill teams out. And that's what I feel about this match because, nothing against, obviously, Brett and the Anvil. I don't know what they were expecting to do with Taker in this match. Obviously, yeah, Anvil probably could have eaten the tombstone from Taker. But don't forget, they were the tag team champions. So, you had to give him a little bit.
Anvil, he jobbed to a clothesline for DiBiase. It's not like he lasted to the end.
Yeah.
If the whole reason was giving someone Taker to, be able to pin, I think they could have still had Dustin in the match. Would have been the worst thing if Taker pinned Dustin. It's like they were building him for major run. I just think it's odd that they don't have him here at all. Like, this is odd that he's not in the corner. He's not mentioned. It's very weird, like, overall.
Yeah, even if at least he came down the aisle with Dustin.
Yeah.
With Dusty. Was Dusty, did he still have the polka dots here, or was he?
He had the black and red.
It was solid black.
Yeah, he was done with I think he was, after the whole Sapphire thing ended, I think he
became dark.
He went into that weird, like, voodoo where he wore the top hat and, the bone around the hat and all that jive.
He was able to be a few months of, like, the old Dusty.
Well, I think they played it up whereas, like, he was devastated over the Sapphire thing and became dark. Like, that was kind of like the whole thing, I think about it. And then after the assault to Dusty.
They should have made it red polka dots instead of yellow. It would have worked better.
I think they did do red. I feel like he did have the red.
They did do red polka dots, actually, Jeremy.
Oh man, that's great.
But I think he did have tights with red polka dots intermittently on, like, Superstars and things like that.
Also,
speaking of dress, I want to point out that the Hammer. It's funny seeing him with his black hair, but with the Elvis jacket on, and he does this right as they're coming out. He does this, like, kind of Elvis, looks like he's having a stroke face right into the camera because he's trying. It's great. It's great seeing him try to do that, try to act the part. Because he looks so just out of place.
Rhythm and Blues Valentine had to be one of the more awkward wrestling characters of all time, honestly. Like, he always just looked so out of place, and he was always, like, trying to do the little honky, like, thumbs, thumb dance and everything. And he always just looked, like, very awkward doing everything.
Yeah.
But speaking of honky, we should also mention that this is his final pay-per-view appearance. Now, he would make a couple more, in future Rumbles as, like, a mystery guy. But for all intents and purposes, this is it for him. His final record, 2-8. 0-2 at the Rumble, 1-2 at WrestleMania, 0-2 at SummerSlam, and 1-2 in Survivor Series matches. So that's it for Honky. He would stick around until maybe I think his last appearance was the weekend of Royal Rumble 91 in the announce booth. He did commentary on Superstars with Vince, and then that would be it for him. Actually, Vince and Piper, the three of them were the booth through the winter. So
right,
then,
Honky went quick. Honky wasn't even there 5 minutes, and he was gone. He was out at 4:16.
Yeah, he's definitely. He kind of got a little rejuvenation with the rhythm and blues thing, but other than that, he's pretty much been on job duty for 2 years now.
Yeah, he was paying some serious dues for dangling the Intercontinental title over Vince's head and threatening to run to Crockett. So
and he would be gone. He would be off camera. I guess he probably worked the indie circuit, I'm guessing, for a couple of years because he doesn't debut in WCW until I think 90. I don't know, it was 94, I think. 93 and 94 he debuts in WCW. I think he's after Hogan joined, so I want to say the summer of 94 he shows up there.
Probably. And then, of course, he would come back
in 96.
In 96 to WWF. So that is it for Honky. But, the match is, I think the Taker debut, I think his entrance kind of threw the whole match into, like, some kind of different mode because I don't think people expected that response from him. I mean, literally, my brother said everyone was just... They didn't know what to make of him. If it was just some weird guy with an outfit but right from the minute he walked through that tunnel, Mark Calloway knew how to make this character work. Mm-hmm. And obviously he would have a better manager down the line, and we'll get to that guy when we get there. But I think he just understood what Vince probably wanted out of this character, regardless of whether they thought it would be temporary or how long it would last. I'd be curious to see. I wish someone would do an interview, and who knows if Taker ever will, but I'm always curious to wonder what they thought the shelf life of that character was supposed to be. Because it seems like you said, right from the minute he walked through that tunnel at the Civic Center, he was going to be something special for a while. Now, you never know. I'm sure they probably were happy with a couple of years worth of it, but immediately it just seemed like the fans just enveloped this character. Because really, there was really never that dark of a character.
No.
Through the first 5 years of the pay-per-view, as we call it here and on the place to be, the pay-per-view era. No,
as dark as you got during that time was like Kamala. Well, even he was, he never really made pay-per-view, but he was around.
Right.
Sika, like that was kind of the dark guys we had. Nothing like this.
But nothing like this.
Killer
I mean, this was straight up serious, like, incredible intensity and I
guess Zeus kind of tried to be that, but he just didn't really have chops.
No, he looked like a guy who got hit in the head with a 2x4 and not Duggan's. But
I was about to say you're egging it on,
You're
asking for it at this point.
I am. Yeah, well, that was Zeus for you.
I always looked at this match as kind of like a tale of two halves. The first half to me is the Taker stuff and the Dusty stuff. You get the Dusty DiBiase interaction a little bit. You get all the Taker, his big spots out of there, and you kind of get to know who he is. And then he takes Dusty out with a double axe handle, which is kind of weird as well. It's almost like they weren't even... this whole match is bizarre to me. It's like Dusty and DiBiase weren't even feuding, but they were in this like intense feud on TV. But it's like here they don't even really interact that much.
Right.
It's similar to DiBiase and Hogan from '89 when they weren't even feuding. And I mean, what happened there? That was just odd, just kind of an odd placement.
And for a time period where they were so, I could understand this like 1999, this kind of stuff, but they were so into planning ahead and having every little detail, thought out at this period. It's just odd to me that they do stuff like this. But to me, the first half of this match ends when Taker gets counted out. And then from there on, it's the Bret Hart clinic. It's down to him against Valentine and DiBiase. He takes out Valentine, and then him and DiBiase have an awesome 4-minute match. That even Piper and Gorilla are just gushing over. And of course, we should mention, I think it was either a day or 2 days before the show, Bret Hart's brother, Dean, passed away. Dean was one of, you always said, was that the one that was like his favorite brother? He was like always looked up to him. He was kind of like the rebel.
Yeah,
Dean, that was one of his favorite,
Yeah, he says it on the Heart and Soul DVD. Dean was the one who was kind of the rebel. He was kind of in the periphery of the wrestling business. He actually tried to book his own concerts in the Calgary area. He was just kind of like the misfit, and he had a very bad drug problem. and
he
it had
ended up his kidney issues.
Yeah, kidneys or liver or something like that, and he passed away. I think this was on a Thursday night. I think he passed away like that Sunday.
Yeah, because Piper even says that Brett or Gorilla, one of them, say that he dedicated the match to his brother Dean.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Brett, the classic after he loses in the end when DiBiase pins him, he's the classic fuck, very clear plain side of the camera.
Yes.
He whipped out a plancha, so he was going for it. He was putting on a nice little show there. You didn't really see planchas back then. It was really rare, at least in the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
So, that made it just a little more special. And then I think him losing also kind of made us, even though, he had dedicated it to his brother, I always thought Brett had better matches when he lost.
Yeah.
Because it was just, he made everything so believable.
And at this point, too, he was closing in on, finally breaking through. So it kind of made sense to have him just get pinned by a guy a little bit higher than him. Because, as we get to 91, obviously, and he starts to go solo finally, that was kind of the story they tell over this next few months. That he's almost there, it's just but he can't quite close a deal yet.
It's almost like this was almost like probably his last dress rehearsal. I think after being kind of teased for the last 2 years.
Well, even at the Rumble, he gets a good showing. He comes in.
Yeah.
We'll get there, but he has a good run in the Rumble, too. So you could tell they were definitely starting to position him, even though they're still tag champions. And actually, we should talk about that now. Remember, we kind of referenced it in our last show with the tag titles. In October, the plan was actually to take the belts off of the Hart Foundation and put them on the Rockers. And Neidhart was actually going to be released. This is all... well known. They had told him, you're putting over the Rockers and you're gone. I guess they were going to probably kickstart the Brett stuff earlier, I guess. But what ended up happening is they filmed the match, but the rope broke. And the whole match was a disaster. It was best out of 3 falls. They still wrestled with the rope broken. And then Vince ended up changing his mind, deciding he didn't want the Rockers to win yet. So he ended up saying that the match did not count because the rope was broken. That was the kayfabe reason they gave. They ended up keeping Neidhart, and they kept the Hearts together a little bit longer. The Rockers... whiff on their closest they ever came to the tag titles. And I wonder if they were eventually going to pass on to Power and Glory. That would kind of be my guess. That's how they seemed like things were going.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that match is actually on.
It is.
It's on the Shawn Michaels DVD.
Yes, yep.
Is it the Heartbreak and Triumph one, or is it the Mike Journey?
No, it's the Heartbreak and Triumph, and it's not.
October.
It's not a very good match. Yeah.
No, it's awful.
Well, it's tough. I think they all because without a rope, the Irish whips are weak and that kind of thing. And number 2, you're afraid of somebody getting hurt if you go too far. You fucking flop over and kill yourself. So you're right. It is on disc 2 of the Heartbreak and Triumph DVD. So, So obviously they had their mind made up. They knew Brett was going to be a star, and but obviously the match kind of So if anything, it actually gave the Anvil 6 more months of paychecks.
Yeah, exactly.
So he actually lucks out in the deal. He would end up coming back because they would need him.
Yeah, he wasn't going long when he does finally leave.
But this was a good match. You're right. It is a tale of 2 halves. The first half was obviously this whole aura of this new guy, Undertaker, and once he's out of the match, then it pretty much goes down to Brett kind of doing all the work rate. So back-to-back years, 89, it was with Savage. And this match, it's with DiBiase, 2 obviously more than capable guys in the ring. And things were on the horizon. They were looking up for the Hitman. So,
Jeremy, any final thoughts on this match before we move on?
I don't know how. I'm the biggest Bret Hart mark you will ever meet in your life. My son is named after Bret Hart, but he said in his book that in 1990 he was getting more fan mail than Hogan.
Yes,
and if that's true, let's say that it is true. I mean, it's just amazing that this guy who had he didn't really cut a lot of promos. He wrestled a lot, but after being on the back burner for 88 and 89, now he's getting all this fan mail. And I mean, it would have been awesome had they had, let's say, to keep the belt on the foundation, have the Rockers go over WrestleMania. The Rockers always got cheated when it came to the tag titles. They should have had them at least once.
Yep.
They called them tag team specialists and all that. Why not just have them go over the Harts at WrestleMania? Doesn't kill Bret Hart at all. People still love him. He goes on and does his thing. But I mean, if it's true about the mail, I mean, and you could tell the pops were just off the charts in the 90 Rumble and the 91 Rumble. He got big time pops when he came out. So, and you could tell. I mean, obviously, hindsight's 2020. Looking back now, you see how good he is in the ring. But even back then, you could tell he was gonna stick around. He was gonna be somebody. He was going. Right. And it's also DiBiase's. Finally, DiBiase gets a win at the Survivor Series.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Before that, so
yeah,
it's about time.
So Big Dust actually has to pay the piper for that one. No pun intended. So it's a tale of two halves. Undertaker dominates the first half, and Brett's work rate takes over the second half. And
something
again,
tells me we'll be talking about Undertaker quite a bit as we go through these shows.
Yes, this is not the end for him, of course. Our next match here on the card, speaking of the Rockers, they're in this match. It is the Visionaries, which is actually one of the swankier heel Survivor Series teams of history.
Yes.
Captained by the model Rick Martel, the Warlord, and Justin's favorite tag team of the time, Power and Glory.
Excellent tag team. Against
the Vipers, of course, captained, obviously Vipers, by Jake the Snake Roberts, along with Superfly Jimmy Snuka Brother, and of course Sean and Marty, the Rockers. Now, this wasn't just a thrown together match. The two captains, the model and the Snake, have a little history. So, in one of the more dramatic, quiet, serious moments in the history of the Brother Love Show, a little extra arrogance went too far, and the model squirted his atomizer right in Jake's eye. And that would lead to almost the same vein, and I like your guys' input on this, almost in the same vein as, maybe not as dramatic in terms of the end product, but almost the same as Savage and Steamboat 4 years earlier, 1986, where this big injury to this babyface, and this long road back and all the dramatics, and at the time it was one of those hushed kind of moments, and obviously you're dealing with a guy, Jake, who made anything serious and made anything believable, and he played it. He acted it out as if he literally got hit in the head, and from there, we have our first foray into this new feud, fresh feud, here at Survivor Series, where Rick Martel's Visionaries took on Jake's Vipers.
Yeah, now the build coming off the Brother Love Show, let's just kind of go over that quickly, the rest of the story, because it was, like you said, very, very detailed and quite the injury angle. Martel came back from Paris, of course, was the cloaking for him being away due to some personal issues. For 3 straight episodes of the Brother Love Show, he was just kind of like Brother Love's like background guest while he interviewed other people, and he just kind of strutted around. On that episode that we just played the clip from, Jake was out there, and Scott mentioned Martel was messing around with the bag of the snake. Jake went to protect it, and Martel, got him in the eyes with the arrogance. So over the next few weeks, we get clips of Jake at the optometrist, checking on his vision, and he had like these crazy contacts in where he couldn't see, and he was all huffing and puffing and breathing heavy all the time. On 10/27, Martel was again on Brother Love Show, and this time Jake came out. They teased him. Jake had shades and was walking with a cane. Martel kept mocking him and then slapped him in the face. Martel got pushed back by all the agents, and Jake grabbed a laughing Brother Love and hit him with a DDT. It's actually always one of my favorite clips. Brother Love's great laugh before Jake DDTs him. He was like, ah! That he plants it. And then Jake's sunglasses fall off, and I'll never forget that close-up they do of his eyes all discolored.
That creepy white contact lens.
No.
So then, of course, they announced this match, and the question was, should Jake be wrestling yet? On the Survivor Series showdown before the show, which is something I had on tape for a long time, and I think the tape finally snapped on me. This one I might actually still have somewhere, but I watched the heck out of this show, and it was Tito and Martel finally fought. No, maybe it wasn't Tito. Maybe it was Sean. Damn it. I was just gloating about how much I'd seen it. I think it was Sean and Martel. And Jake comes out, and you know what? Let me check. That may actually have been Saturday Night's Main Event.
Let me check Wrestling Challenge tape. No, it was October, I take it, right?
But I'm thinking now it's the Saturday Night's Main Event, I think.
Let's see. Saturday Night's Main Event, October.
It should have been Tito Martel, and I think Jake came out and interfered, but he couldn't see. Was that Tito Martel?
Let's see. Survivor Series Showdown? That the show you're talking about?
Well, check Saturday's main event. I think it's because the Showdown, Tito fought Sergeant Slaughter. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah. Tuesday Network. It's sometime in October, right? Let's see. Here we go. Pro Wrestling Challenge taping. Sorry, nope, that's not it.
I got it right here. October 13th. No, it's not the one either. I don't know what the hell I'm thinking of then.
Let me check up here. Wrestling Challenge taping. No.
On that Showdown, who did Martel fight on that?
Let me see. November. Let me pan down here. November. What was it? The 19th? Or was it earlier than that? No, it was November 2. Or where is it? November.
No, yeah, it was the 19th. Yeah.
It was the 19th. Let me see.
Yeah, Rick Martel fought Marty Jannetty.
Okay, it was Jannetty, and then Jake came out.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
There
yeah.
It is. All right.
Yep. Okay.
I knew I wasn't going too crazy, but yeah, Jake came out and he couldn't really see, and that's when the final push for this match was like, how the hell is he going to wrestle? He can't even see.
Yeah, there was the same taping that Perfect won the Intercontinental title back. So it was the same night. So this match, it's sad because it was just too good a heel team to have anybody get pinned. Mm-hmm. It was almost laid out that way. The Warlord freshly turned, not turned, but freshly minted new heel, and obviously Power and Glory. They had to have had things going their way in terms of being booked for something special, because they were on top throughout all of 1990. They won a lot of matches on TV. Obviously, they won at SummerSlam. Things were definitely looking up for them, and another import from another company ruined it for them.
Yeah,
we'll get to that when we get there.
I still think that they were going to be the team that beat the Rockers. That's my. And then when they found out about the other team coming in and things kind of got jumbled, they switched it. But I think that's probably was the plan.
Yeah. So Marty, as usual, eats the first pin. Warlord pins him with a power slam. Ricky Martel beats Snuka with a roll-up. Sean, it's funny, Sean was the recipient of a lot of he paid his dues a lot in these early years. He actually Sean eats the Justin's favorite tag team finisher of all time, the Powerplex.
Yes.
And then Jake is counted out to end it. So for the first
he
time,
he chases Martel back. Martel's not the legal man, and he grabs this. He pisses off Jake, and Jake grabs the stake and chases Martel to the back. So.
Right. So for the first time, I believe, in Survivor Series history, a team is unscathed at the end.
Yes, and this is a long match for a Survivor Series match.
Yeah, almost 18 minutes. I mean, and obviously in the early years, the tag team ones were close to 35 minutes, but you're dealing with 10 guys on a side.
Yeah, for a 4-on-4 match, this is pretty long.
Yeah, 18 minutes is long. But you had a lot of good characters and good wrestlers in it. So I like this heel team. I'm glad. I think it was booked properly. The Rockers, it sucks because the Rockers went from being the tag team champions and then getting the rug pulled out from under them and then jobbing here. That's kind of unfortunate. But Power and Glory with a hotter team. What can you say? I mean, they were the darlings on the heel side at the moment. Actually, I think they even jumped over Demolition at this point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In terms of wins on TV, but I think it was booked the right way. Again, the heel team was made to look so good, you really couldn't have any of them lose. So, kudos to the bookers for doing this and making a good heel team look strong.
Yeah, I think by the time they got to where Shawn Michaels is about to be eliminated, like right before they hit the Powerplex, you knew then this whole team was going to the end because they had to have somebody. Warrior's already at the end, and now they got to have somebody to go against him. And I want to say that, Warlord should have done, in this particular persona, he should have done so much more. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole match, it takes, they're double teaming him just to get him off his feet. And he's no-selling, half of the stuff they're throwing at him. He's just standing there, He's like, come on. How much more? He could have worked with Hogan. He could have worked with Warrior. And what they put him into? A feud with, the Bulldog the following year. It's like if they dropped the ball with anyone, one of the guys would have been the Warlord who had the look, he could have used a little better mic skills, but They got him with Slick.
He had Slick.
Exactly.
Didn't need it.
Yeah, I mean, how much more? I just wish they had played the Jive Soul Bro at the pay-per-view. I could have. I would.
Jeremy, Jeremy, I've said this numerous times here on the podcast, and I said it when he debuted at SummerSlam. I thought Warlord would have been a great opponent for Hogan, even on the house show circuit. Have the two of them battle for a few months. Maybe have a run in on Brother Love on TV at a challenge or a Superstars taping. I think Warlord would have been a tremendous opponent for Hogan.
Even just a house show feud, you know what I mean, with Warrior even at this time.
But Warrior needed guys, for God's sakes. I mean, just put anybody in there. Let him. It was essentially after he beat Rude at SummerSlam, it was 5 months of 6-man tags. I mean, it was really sad. And the Warlord, I agree with you 100%, Jeremy. The Warlord was a guy who could have been much better utilized, even in a house show capacity, and they never did anything with it. It's a bummer because he was a good guy you could have put in there,
And, I think he was perfect. Also because, I mean, he could wrestle when he was in the Powers of Pain. They didn't really have a whole lot of bad matches that I've seen. I've always seen solid work. So here's a guy that could, do fairly well. It's not like it would be Hercules and the Warrior back when Herc really didn't have much going for himself. He's better in Power and Glory at this point because he can do his thing and then let Roma do the rest. But a guy like Warlord was perfect. What more do you need? A big, muscular guy. He could move. Mm-hmm. He didn't sell moves. I mean, he had Slick. I don't understand why, like, we're seeing Hogan and Earthquake again, or the Perfect having to do the job of the Warrior. I mean, I don't know that from SummerSlam to Survivor Series would have been enough time to build Warlord up to have him in the main event. But you could come damn close. You've got Saturday night's main events in between all that you could. I mean, he could have done quite well for himself. And like you said, Warrior needed somebody because Hogan killed everyone when he was going up the ladder and then coming down. I mean, what more do you want? It almost baffles the mind when you watch this match how good Warlord looked. And it'll come in later tonight in the podcast as we get further along to the grand finale match. It gets even more mind-boggling after this, but we'll wait till we get there before we go any further.
Mm.
Yeah, so that pretty much there's not much else to say about this match. The Jake Martel feud will continue on. Obviously, it didn't end here. Jake gets counted out, chasing him to the back. I kind of like the little moment after Shawn gets eliminated, and he kind of goes over and like apologizes to Jake for leaving him by himself. Being kind of blinded against 4 guys. So it was kind of a cool little touch. To really put over how injured Jake still was. So, that was the whole story coming into this, that the faces were kind of outmanned size-wise, and of course, with Jake, his eyes still not being right. So, that's it for there. So, the Visionary...
Did he have the white contact lens here? I think he did, right? I thought so.
Yeah, they were selling how his... when he would go for the DDT and Herc slipped out at one point, Piper talked about how his feet weren't in the right position because of his eye being, he didn't have sight in that eye. So it's a nice little touch to that, that pushes that factor a little more about, it's got to be in the right place to hit the DDT. And that's how Jake is messed up at this point, because he doesn't have his full vision. So that's why he couldn't hit his moves and really take control of the match.
No, Piper definitely stepped up here. He obviously doing more TV stuff between SummerSlam and now. He definitely has honed down his delivery and countering with a good play-by-play guy. And obviously Gorilla, and not a knock on Vince, and I know Justin loves Vince, but at the time on pay-per-view, nobody beat Gorilla in play-by-play. So this was a good chance for Piper to really learn from a master. And he definitely, Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head with that example, how kind of really selling it intelligently and logically was really helping Piper with his delivery as a color guy. So I concur with you on that, and it actually helped sell the Jake Martel feud, which was the centerpiece of the match. So,
yep. So that's
so there we go.
That's it for that match. Scott, I'll let you go ahead and do the next match.
Oh, okay. The next. Oh God, no.
Yeah.
Nah. Why? It's got your two favorite. You said your other two favorite guys in it. Oh, what the hell? Why not? All right. The Natural Disasters, the heel team. Captained, of course, by Earthquake. His toady there, Dino Bravo, who's pretty much nothing but a hanger-on at this point. Kind of like Anvil. He lucked out and still has a job.
Yep.
The Barbarian, obviously, awesome heel here. And Haku, as Vince would call him at the Rumble Open. Taking on the former World Wrestling Federation champion, of course, Hulk Hogan, or as Warrior still calls him, Ho Kogan, Tugboat, the Big Boss Man, and some other guy. And
I got my 2x4. I got the American flag.
You know, I find it interesting because today that we're doing this podcast, by the way, is the 15th anniversary of the birth of the NWO. I would have loved if all 7 other guys just beat the crap out of him and left him there in the middle of the ring. I wouldn't even have cared about the rest of the eliminations. If all 7 of them just murdered him and left, I would have been fine with it. But in any event, that didn't happen, unfortunately. So anyway, yes, Hacksaw Jim Duggan is the last guy on the babyface side. So you knew he was getting another win. God forbid. Couldn't have been on the Vipers. No, he had to be on this team because he knew he was going to win. But the question is, would he have survived? One guy that you see conspicuous by his absence in this match, or in any of these matches so far, is the former #1 contender, Ravishing Rick Rude. No longer there.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for.
Yeah, and as you can tell, you didn't. Good job, moron. Lovely. It's the last guy I would ever trust to look for anything. It's actually a funny. One of our other loyal listeners, Chris James the Sanchez, sent me a picture of a Jim Duggan action figure. What were the ones you have, Justin? Those weren't Hasbro, right? Were those the Hasbro ones? Yeah. The Hasbro one. Sent me a picture of it, and I still can't fathom the fact the guy's actually going to write an autobiography. I have a personalized box of crayons for him so he could draw the picture. In any event.
Well, speaking of the Sanchez, he did pass along some stats for you.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, so he has been keeping a database of all match results, trying to take after Graham Cawthon, I think.
Yes.
He compiled records of various superstars in the WWF, and he provided me the television records for these superstars for the years 1989 and 1990. So this counts pay-per-views and television matches.
Yeah, so we're talking Challenge, Superstars, Prime Time, Saturday's main events, anything on TV. So no house show matches, only TV shows.
Okay, so I'm going to read you some of the luminaries from those 2 years, okay?
Okay.
Jeremy's buddy, the Warlord, was 54-11. Dusty Rhodes, 33-4, surprisingly enough.
Wow.
Macho Man, 20-6. Earthquake, 32-3. DiBiase, 51-6. Shawn Michaels, 50-6. Bret Hart, 55-6. Now here come the heavy hitters. Hulk Hogan, 19-3. So not many TV matches.
He took a lot of them off.
Ultimate Warrior, the world champion, 47-1. His only pinfall loss was to Rick Rude at WrestleMania 5.
Okay.
And your boy, the Hacksaw, over a 2-year span of televised matches.
This is unfathomable.
65-2.
What? Do we even know what he said? God,
he said I'm 65-2.
You need to.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for.
Yeah, why don't you go out and play in traffic while you go look for her too? I can't even. I don't know.
65.
I don't even know why anybody even bothered. It should have just been Duggan and Hogan in the Ultimate Challenge, and you know, and
the Goldberg of his day. Clearly, he was the Goldberg of his day. There's just no other way around it.
His only losses too. He was pinned by Savage on Saturday Night's Main Event, and then the loss at Survivor Series 89 where he got counted out. Those are his only 2 losses. So he actually never lost on TV. You know, like Superstars or Challenge like that. It was just that one Saturday Night's Main Event to Savage in early 90, 1990.
The only difference
they should have gave him the.
So his 2 losses came within a month. It was Survivor Series and then the 1/9 Saturday's Main Event, and that's it.
They should have gave him the Mr. Perfect gimmick. It would have worked.
Oh yeah, quite perfect. The only difference between him and Goldberg is that Goldberg's not a drooling, snot-blowing buffoon. But anyway, kill me.
All right, so let's I'll go ahead and do the Rude thing.
All right,
this is actually one of my favorite storylines of all time.
All right, go ahead.
After the big main event loss to SummerSlam, Rude took a step backwards, entered into a feud with the Big Boss Man, The fact that he's shooting a boss man wasn't really that bad. The bad part came as to why the feud started, and it was because Bobby Heenan and Rude were making disparaging remarks about the big boss man's mother. Yep, you read that correctly, or you heard that correctly. They were making fun of the boss man's mama. On 923 Challenge, the big boss man defeated Paul Perez, then made his way to the commentary table. He confronted Heenan, then forced him down to ringside and ended up handcuffing him to the guardrail. Heenan remained there for the entire show, begging fans and all the wrestlers to untie him. Or uncuff him. That is actually one of my favorite episodes of Challenge ever. I love that whole thing. Finally, at the end, Rude comes down, starts flipping out. Vince goes down, interviews the two, and Rude ended up getting so nasty in his interview about Bossman and his mother, they censored him on air. Heenan could not be freed and was still cuffed as the show ended. Despite the humiliation, the barrage of brutal comments from Rude and Heenan continued, mainly on primetime with Heenan and Gorilla. Once this match was announced, it was revealed that Rude would be on Earthquake's team and Bossman would be on Hogan's team. The weeks leading up to the show, Rude and McMahon had a big falling out over Rude's contract, and he ended up walking out of the WWF. On the 10/27 Superstars, Jack Tunney appeared and announced that due to his recent behavior, Rude would be suspended indefinitely, and Bobby Heenan would fulfill his contractual obligations on the house show circuit. Rude would be replaced by Haku in this match, and would eventually debut in WCW. So this is it for Rude. Obviously, he does return to the promotion many years later. But as far as in-ring stuff, he's done here. For now. So he goes to WCW, I think, the following year, and then goes on to have a pretty great 3-year run there. So
Yeah, actually, we should probably adjust the wording on our fun fact. We said it was weeks after walking out on Vince he would debut. It wasn't weeks. It was probably less than a year. He debuted at Halloween Havoc 91.
91. Okay, yeah. It wasn't 90.
No, it was Halloween Havoc 91. He's this mysterious masked guy.
Yep.
The Phantom or something. He beats some schmuck. And you could tell by his...
Right before I go to the curtain.
Yeah. Why couldn't he have made disparaging remarks about somebody's mother? I don't even know what his mother looks like. Anyway, Rude would end up being the Phantom. Rude really would like to be appreciated here, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
Even though he can't sit here to defend himself. Yeah, he would come out as the Phantom at Halloween Havoc 91, and you could tell by his physique that it's Rude. I mean, an idiot could have figured that. Somebody like Duggan could have figured it out. And then he takes the mask off and then goes on a run for the next 3 years, has great matches with Sting, with Ricky Steamboat. He would end up being U.S. champion and the quote-unquote international champion when there were 2 belts in WCW.
No, I haven't, Dust, but we're all still looking for her.
Yeah, keep looking. She's still missing. Keep looking. Go in front of that truck that's moving on the Jersey Turnpike. Yeah, go ahead. And they fire the Iron Sheik. They both were in the car. They both had drug paraphernalia, but the Iron Sheik gets fired. No wonder he's pissed off and crazy now. I would be too. In any event, the boss man ends up pinning Haku, which would have been Rude, with a sidewalk slam. And then look at this.
Sad that Rude left. I was.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of him, and even though this storyline was kind of hokey with him and Boss Man's mom, it was still, he was still getting very good at this time period. And obviously, we'd see in WCW how great he would become.
And in an ironic serpentine case of irony and hypocrisy, 10 years later, Boss Man would make fun of the Big Show's father. So, go figure. But yeah, I mean, Rude was a great competitor, but obviously the roster was kind of passing him by, and new guys were coming in, and he was kind of got lost in the shuffle and ended up leaving, and obviously treated much better in WCW than he was. Not honestly treated much better, but at least the last year he was clearly abused and not used as well as he should have, and then would end up going on a great run in WCW from 91 till...
Actually, and it's funny, not to mock you anymore, but one of his final matches, because I remember I have it on tape, it's from the Halloween primetime in 1990, and him and Duggan was the main event from Madison Square Garden. It was actually an interesting match. I think Duggan won by DQ, obviously.
Of course he did. Why wouldn't he? Can't even give Rick Rude a win. Yeah. He didn't get a win at the Garden.
I got to double check it for you before you go too crazy. But I'm fairly certain that... Well, obviously he must have, because we know he only lost twice, so...
Yeah, so... and he is actually disqualified here. How about that? He's not a survivor in the match. Son of a gun. How about that? He gets disqualified. I don't know why. Probably actually got caught using the 2x4, which Gorilla never bothered to criticize him on. Everybody else was not allowed to use foreign objects, but for Duggan, it was for the good of the fans.
Yeah, here it is right here. The 10/22 primetime. Duggan defeated Rude by DQ at 9:10 when Rude pushed the referee to the mat. This is Rude's last MSG appearance for 7 years.
I would have quit too after losing to him.
Yeah, thank you.
I would have left too.
I just want to let you know, Jeremy, that there is some kind of secret deal between Justin and Simon Cowell over royalties for every time that he plays something from that stupid album. But in any event, then Hogan pins Bravo, ending their feud that started at the Rumble when Hogan was bad-mouthing Bravo in his promo.
Yes.
Now it comes full circle and he pins him here. And then Earthquake pins Boss Man. And then Tugboat and Earthquake are counted out.
Yeah, because it was obviously clear, too, at this point, they were trying to, similar to what they did with Hogan and Beefcake the year before with Mr. Perfect, that they were trying to slowly siphon that feud into Tugboat and Earthquake. Obviously, but them getting double count out here. Hogan and Quake would still kind of feud on until the Rumble, but it was clear that they were trying to slowly, merge those feuds and let Hogan move on.
Right. And finally, Hogan pins the Barbarian.
Yes, and now that 3.5 minutes of Hogan Barbarian is actually an excellent match.
Yeah, it is.
This is where Barbarian really gets onto his hot streak here through WrestleMania and even into the summer of '91 on the house shows. And if you watch a couple of those house shows on 24/7, he had some good matches with Bret Hart over that summer. But the 3 minutes here was great, and he hits Hogan with his clothesline off the top, and he just really, really looked good, and you could tell he was starting to gain some confidence as a solo guy, and he's another guy similar to Warlord that really could have been something more than he was.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not even half kidding you. I thought that Hogan and Duggan would end up being the survivors, but even Duggan couldn't get in the way of the orange pose downs. For once, it was good that Hogan was very political here and wanted to follow it up. At least he could spell. At least he could spell. In any event, let's move on from this. Hogan wins and everybody else loses, and thank God.
Anything
Okay.
you got, Jeremy, on that match before we move on?
Well, Hogan, of course, he beats up Heenan at the end, who, oddly enough, Heenan didn't do anything. He didn't do any interference. He didn't jump up on their apron or nothing. But Hogan beats him up because, of course, that's what role models do. And then what was the other thing? Oh, Tugboat. To me, it seemed odd because Tugboat as a face just looks odd to me.
Yep.
Then as a heel, it looks normal. But when you watch Tugboat, you're like, what? It just doesn't. It doesn't. You knew that. There's no way this guy was staying face. It just wasn't going to happen.
No, and like we mentioned earlier with the Undertaker's gimmick, like obviously this gimmick was going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And how many times can you be Hogan's buddy before you turn heel anyway?
Right.
Beefcake is the only one that kept doing it because I guess he was always okay to carry Hogan's bags.
Well, he might have turned heel eventually anyway if he didn't get hurt. I mean, who knows where they're.
Well, I guess yeah. Well, I guess he did. He did in '94, didn't he?
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Butcher.
But I bet you Beefcake. Yeah, well, somebody had to carry his baggage. God forbid. Maybe someone else would get in trouble with the drugs. But anyway, Jeremy, is there any last words? You could please move on from this match.
Duggan did get. Duggan got disqualified because he just blatantly hit. I think it was Earthquake with a 2x4. But I have to say that I look forward to every Duggan match on these vintage vaults because it always brings a smile to my face. No offense, brother, to hear your defeat at the hands of the Hacksaw.
Yeah,
and we should mention too the great patriot that he is. He has the yellow ribbons tied on his 2x4 at this show for Operation Desert Shield that was going on at this point.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, Desert Shield. Yeah, it was going on in the fall. So that's understandable. I hope you buy me a car with all those. Yeah. I hope you buy me a car with all those Simon Cowell royalties. In any event, speaking of a guy you mentioned earlier, Jeremy, the Macho King Randy Savage. He's interviewed now by Mean Gene, and lays down a challenge to the Ultimate Warrior for a world title shot. There. No, he came out alone. Yeah, Savage came out alone. And begins the feud with the Ultimate Warrior as he lays down a challenge for a world title shot. And this is where finally, after a good year and a half of looking like a complete kook, Savage finally starts to level out and go back to the awesome Macho Man that we all know and love. So finally, he gets off the kook bandwagon and gets back to the Savage we want to see.
Well, that didn't surprise me a bit because Lou Albano is a big, fat, sloppy pig.
Boy, you're really cleaning out the entire cabinet tonight, aren't you?
Well, you got to get that in at least.
Yeah, we don't know where to fit it anymore because we don't see Captain Lou for another 3 years or something. Yeah.
It's good enough to play repeatedly.
Yes, that is true. Because actually, any little Jesse now helps because we don't have him anymore. So not for at least another 8.5 years. So Savage, and I agree with you, Jeremy. It's interesting that I have to go with Justin's theory. I have a feeling Savage might have been hurt because there's got to be a reason why you don't put the guy on the show. He came off a big win over Rhodes at SummerSlam. You'd have thought he'd be on here somewhere, and wasn't. So maybe he was hurt, or maybe Vince agreed to give him for all the jobbing he did to Dusty. Maybe he offered to get the night off and didn't have to wrestle. So I don't know, but there had to have been a reason. But
and at least the promo. I mean, the promo did something. It wasn't in vain. It wasn't done to just kill time. You know, there's a point to it. Unlike the promo in our next match that we'll get to in just a minute.
Yes.
So our next, can I keep going, or do you want this match now?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, that's good. I'm asking my PIC, because you made me suffer through that other one. I'll continue. Our next match actually involves another red-hot heel who somehow really moved up the chain of command quicker than anybody thought. The Alliance, which consists of, no wonder he's making me do this match, Nikolai Volkov, the captain, Tito Santana, and, of course, the Bushwhackers, although I don't have as much vitriol for the Bushwhackers as I do Duggan. They take on the Mercenaries, which is really not a very good team at all. Sergeant Slaughter, the captain, obviously in full pro-Iraqi mode.
And now he has General Adnan here at this point too, right?
Yes, General Adnan is here now as well. The former Sheikh Adnan El Casey, who was a big manager in the AWA, as well as I believe he was in World Class as well, but I know I remember him in the AWA. Boris Zukov, who at this point we thought was already out of a job, and sure enough, he would get pinned within a minute. And the Orient Express of Sato and Tanaka. Sato! And this would actually be Sato's. This would actually be Sato's last pay-per-view match, and it would actually be his last. I don't know if he'd be on camera after this. He wouldn't be on camera at least for another 4.5 years.
Yes.
But he's done after this.
And much to my sadness, of course, Keem was originally supposed to be on the Mercenaries, but he left a few weeks before and was replaced by Boris Zukov. So, very sad. I thought we were going to get one more Akeem appearance. I remember at the time, too, when they did random week where they showed Boris instead of Akeem. I was heartbroken. Very, very sad. Yes. But I think I know the promo that Jeremy is talking about, but we'll let him go ahead and mention it.
Yeah, the promo where Gene stops Slaughter in the middle of the aisle and Slaughter just kind of rambles on for, I think it's a little over 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes or so, and the music's still playing, and you can barely hear Slaughter. You're like, what is this guy saying? And by the end of it, you're going, what was the point? I mean, they end up running through the match very quickly anyway, so why even have the promo? Because that's 2.5 minutes you could have had left over, for the match. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're watching a 5-star classic here or anything, but at the very least, we didn't need the promo, or at the very, very least, cut the music so I can hear what the guy's saying. And how weird does the whole team look?
Yes, just standing there.
Camouflage, yeah, and just standing there, and then the guys, they all have the camouflage face paint on.
Yeah.
I mean, how ridiculous is that looking? How great would have Akeem would have looked with the face paint and standing there next to those guys? He would have really fit in so well.
Oh, and awesome. But yeah, this match is weird because it does go really fast and it's very awkward. Like, Tito takes out Boris in under a minute, which is weird. You'd think Nikolai would have gotten that win. Then Luke takes out Sato. Tito takes out Tanaka. So Nikolai, who's kind of still being pushed a little bit as the face, even though I don't think he makes it much into 91 at all, doesn't get any pins. So now the faces are up 4-1. Slaughter's by himself just 2 minutes in. 3 minutes later, he takes out Nikolai very easily with an elbow drop. So that to me pretty much solidifies that Nikolai's gone. Slaughter then takes out Butch and Luke within 20 seconds of each other, and then looks like he's going to defeat Tito, but he pulls the ref in front of Tito's flying forearm, and Tito wins by DQ. I think they did that just because they needed another face in the main event, but I don't get why Slaughter... they could have worked things differently to have Slaughter win this match and move on, just because he was kind of being set up for bigger things, and it's just weird that they have him lose. But this whole show is this odd booking overall, but I also don't get why they didn't... Go ahead, Jeremy.
This is the one time I really miss Jesse because of Chico Santana. I totally miss his commentary for the Tito Santana matches he did commentary for were just gold. The flying jalapeno and Chico Santana and all that. It was great. It was gold.
And selling tacos out of his truck in in Tula.
In the NFL, the Mexican Football League.
Yes. MFL, yes.
I was going to say no. God, move on.
Okay, don't play the Duggan theme to cover it.
Oh no, that's what I was saying. You reminded me. I don't get why they didn't have Duggan on this team instead of Santana, because the whole tie-in with Slaughter and Nikolai, and they could have had Tito be on Hogan's team.
And then Tito would have gotten screwed out of the main event spot, and then Duggan would have been in it instead.
No, you could have
Nobody
Slaughter.
wants to see that.
You could have Slaughter advance. I don't know. You could have done something.
No, yeah, like that was going to happen.
It just seems like Duggan would have fit in this match more than Tito did. That's all.
Or you could have had actually, if Duggan was in it, you could have probably had a double DQ, and they could have brawled in the back, and then there would have been nobody from this match. That would have made it a lot easier. But
or Boris could have advanced.
it could have been Boris and Luke in the final pin there. But yeah, it was very weird. I don't know if you think Slaughter was already. Obviously, he must have been if they booked the match like this with him getting all these wins in the end. Obviously, I'm sure they already had their thoughts in mind about what to do. Although, we did mention earlier that they probably still had Hogan Warrior 2 on their minds.
I'm guessing they were still a little unsure, yeah. But I don't think the Slaughter Warrior match actually was announced pretty early. When I was watching those Superstars on Classics On Demand, it was like pretty much like mid to late December I think it was mid-December they announced a Slaughter match. So maybe at this point they did kind of have it in mind, but I still think they were teasing a Hogan Warrior match at some point, even if it wasn't going to be at 7, maybe even a SummerSlam the next year. It seemed like they were still trying to keep that fresh, that those two were linked at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they had to, because they were still advertising to have WrestleMania at the LA Sports Coliseum,
right? Yep.
Where they were trying to draw 100,000. There's no way 100,000 were going to show up to see Slaughter and Hogan.
No.
There's no way. So they had to have Warrior and Hogan too, at least at the forefront. That had to have been the plan. I can't think of any other reason that they would. Change it would be the change in the venue, smaller arena. So you don't, I guess you don't have to have Warrior and Hogan again, but it would have been nice to see, definitely.
And I'm guessing the Slaughter thing didn't really take off until the Gulf War kind of exploded. When did Desert Storm begin? Was it December?
No, January 15th. Oh. It was like a week before the Rumble.
Okay, so never mind then. I was thinking it was when that kind of escalated is when they decided to go forward with it.
No, I think it was very close. The Rumble was what, the 19th? Yeah, it was like
you're right.
It was like
January 17th. Yep, it was 2 days before.
Yeah, it was a couple days before Desert Storm started. So, but so Tito, who has worked very hard over the last 5 years and since the start of the pay-per-view era, and for the first time in a long time, he actually gets a little prop here, and Tito moves on to the grand finale. So
now,
kudos to
Tito. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, we get to hear his cool music. That's one of the main reasons why I like Tito is his music. And like you said, he gets a win finally.
Yeah, it was good to see him get a win.
Yes.
Now, before we get to the main event, of course, we have the co-main event. The weeks leading up to the show, there was a giant egg that started showing up in all the arenas. And there was rumors week to week as what was inside the egg. It was set to hatch at Survivor Series. Reading some of the old Herb Coons tidbits, there were rumors that it was going to be King Kong Bundy making his return, coming out of the egg. And also, there were rumors. There were also rumors that that's what the Undertaker was going to debut. That Mark Calloway is going to debut, and there was one of the unsubstantiated rumors that he was going to be like the Eggman or something. That was going to be his gimmick. So,
God, that would have been terrible.
Thankfully, it was neither of those. But what we got was not much better.
It's all over. Well, stand back. Oh, look at the crunch. I think that egg is ready to blow. Oh, there it is. What is it? What in the world? Oh, my God. What in the world is this?
Yeah, weren't we all trying to answer that question? You're like Piper trying to put it over. Wow! He's probably thinking, what a piece of shit.
Yeah, well, he would sell that all the way through that segment. Then he'd say, "Oh, we should make him the mascot" and all this other stuff, and he kept doing that awful fake Piper laugh. And
San Diego chicken, eat your heart out.
And of course, we get the Turkey in the Straw music and him and Gene Square dance, and yeah.
Hideous.
And I love the crowd booing as soon as he comes out. Like, they didn't even know what it was, but they didn't give a shit. It was nothing important. They could tell immediately, so they fucking just start booing him mercilessly.
Yes. Yeah, my brother said that the boo was pretty heavy at that point. Obviously,
when Gene said it was about to blow, I almost lost it.
That egg is about to blow.
Yeah. I'm surprised Duggan didn't come out of the egg and said I can't find any blow. But anyway, obviously the character is whatever's at the bottom of the egg. Why didn't he come out of the egg? They could have booed him. Obviously, the character that came out of the egg was the gobbledygooker, otherwise known as Hector Guerrero. Poor Uncle Hector. Eddie could be very proud of that guy, rest his soul. Hector, one of the legendary Guerreros, he actually only a couple years earlier actually was at a AWA pay-per-view, the same pay-per-view that Jerry Lawler and Kerry Von Erich main evented, Super Clash 3. The Guerrero family actually was in a 6-man tag at the beginning.
He actually and still does. He does a Spanish commentary for TNA now as well.
Oh, he still does. I know he'd been doing it a couple like last year, the year before. I didn't know he was still there, but
everybody, and get up off your feet. Come on, gobbledygooker, and do the bird with me. I said, bird, 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 bird.
I don't even remember that. Thank God, either. Please don't ever play that again.
Why don't you show me some of that dancing you do? Oh, yeah, that's it, yeah. Well, I'll never dance like you, but I can do this. How about you?
They actually let that be on camera? Oh God! We'd like to apologize to our listeners here on the Place to Be podcast. We've been infiltrated by a bad chicken soup.
Oh boy, Gasoline! Can you believe our new feathered friend, the gobbledygooker? Isn't he a bloody beaut? Oh, Cousin Butch, all the little wackaroos will love him. Oh!
Yeah, he certainly was a wackaroo. See what you brought with us, Jeremy? This is all your fault.
Well, yeah, so those played like week after week on Superstars for a few weeks,
Oh my
and then
God.
they finally gave it up.
Oh, that's horrible.
Oh, that is absolutely unquestionably hideous. Him and Coco sound like they were having an orgy. I don't even know. It was like, oh, let's dance.
definitely
And then,
would
it's
have attended
and then words stopped being said. I don't know. Sorry, folks, here on the Place to Be podcast. Thank God this is the last pay-per-view of 1990. And then when we get to next year, well, things get a lot better. But, yeah, in any event, thank God Undertaker didn't. We don't know what Mark Calloway would be now if he'd popped through the egg. Good Lord. Wouldn't be 2 decades of destruction. Oh, that's for sure. Anyway, let's move on from that. And get to the main event, the first ever Ultimate Survival Grand Finale. For the first time and only time in Survivor Series history, the winners of all the Survivor Series matches meet at the end. They should have had something cool like a trophy or something. I don't know. It would have made some kind of reward. Would have been, interesting. Would have looked very NWA-ish because they used to do all that cash rewards and trophies and all that kind of jazz. So that's probably why Vince didn't do it. The teams again, Tito Santana, Hulk Hogan, and the Ultimate Warrior, taking on Ted DiBiase and the entire Visionaries. So it's actually a 5-on-3 match. So obviously, for the sake of storyline build, the faces had to be at the disadvantage, of course. And Tito actually eliminates the Warlord to start with a flying burrito, as Jesse would say. Flying burrito.
Another nice win for Tito. I was glad to see him get a pin here.
Yeah, no, it was good at least they had him get something in this match if he was in it.
Because then 20 seconds later, he's eliminated.
Yeah,
So-
with DiBiase's only finisher other than the $1 Million Dream, which was the stun gun, which is actually one of my favorite finishers, and I liked when Steve Austin used it in WCW a couple years later. Then I'm going to let you talk about this one, because this, for the second straight year, the Orange Goblin really, really torques you off. And why don't you explain to them why he torques you off here?
All right. Well, you have Power and Glory minding their own business in the tag division, slowly getting themselves over, unbelievably, these 2 career low-mid carders. Really starting to mesh. They have an awesome tag team finisher, devastating, destroyed the Rockers at SummerSlam, destroyed them again here tonight. The Powerplex, tremendous move, and that stupid fucking prick kicks out of it on 1. At 1. And he blows out of the pin. He couldn't even just lay there and have someone save him or get his foot on the rope or at least go to 2.5. Fucking 1 count. They spent all those months building that move up, and that jackass has to go kick out at 1. Was it really needed? Did he really need that, honestly? Just leave them alone.
Tell us how you really feel.
Jesus Christ.
That's what it is, man. I agree with him. If anything, and this is not a knock on DiBiase, but if you're going to have somebody should have had to be pinned with the Powerplex. And Tito was going to be sacrificed. That was clear as day. It wasn't going to be either of the other two.
Not even that. Just don't use it. Just don't even use the move then.
Yeah.
I'd rather not use it than have what happened because it's just such a waste. It just doesn't make any sense. And this whole thing pisses me off too. That I know you wanted to have a cute moment with Hogan and Warrior, but I don't know. I just felt like they were shoehorning him in, and again, Warrior has to share the spotlight and doesn't get to solidify his title reign.
Right. I agree with this. And, Tito looks good here.
Well, Martel gets counted out. I think Jake comes out again, right?
Yeah, Jake comes out and chases him again, so Martel just runs off. And then Hogan...
He's got to pin DiBiase one more time. He didn't squash him enough the year before. He's gonna get
exactly. As if God forbid the bastard gets a pin earlier in the show. No. He doesn't deserve that. No. Let me take him out again. Because, I'm very scared of DiBiase. Like he was. He had to take out Dino Bravo. Now it's time to take out Ted DiBiase. Let's just kill every heel on the roster. Warrior, don't worry about it. I'll pick all the bones for you. That's okay. Don't worry
Hercules,
about it.
I think, of the heels actually came out the best. So lasting all the way to the end. So good for him there.
And then Warrior, it's almost like a 2.5 year feud comes to an end after the weird ending to their match at WrestleMania 4. Warrior gets the best of Hercules here to conclude the 2.5 year feud. And there you go. And then the end is pretty predictable. Hogan and Warrior flexing and posing to end the show. I agree with you now that I think about it, about this whole thing of Power and Glory. I just don't think that anybody even listened to any of Hogan's rants. I think they just said, yeah, whatever, do whatever you want to do. When in reality, all he was doing was just making the roster just more inept. And that's sad. Because Power and Glory were a great team. And unfortunately, once again, it means that the roster was so good to have such a healthy tag division. Now by 1990, it's not as good as it was in like 88, even 89. It's still pretty good, though. And just to have Hogan just demolish it like it didn't even exist, it's just it sucks. I'm surprised if the Road Warriors weren't in this match. He'd friggin' squash them too. But in the end, the two big baby faces got their moment, and we didn't see any tension between them or anything like that. So if there was any inkling that they were going to wrestle in the sequel at WrestleMania 7, they hadn't really tipped their hat to it yet. It was just two baby faces giggling at each other and posing and all that kind of jazz. So, and moving on and smiling at each other like they did because God forbid, Tito doesn't even get a great moment. All right, Tito, you got your moment. Go to your taco truck. It's pretty much what Hogan was doing. See ya. You're so 1984. Move on. And the guys get their moment. What do you think of that, Jeremy? What do you think of this whole thing about Hogan and just, how would you have booked if these were the guys here, would you have booked it differently? And if you did, how would you have done it?
Well, I mean, if we're going into, let's say we're going into it with the same guys. First of all, I think it's odd that Warlord takes a pin in a minute and a half when earlier in the show he's looking as strong as ever. And that's what I mentioned earlier when we reviewed the Vipers Visionaries matches. It didn't make sense to have Warlord be so strong and then a minute and a half in, pinned by, I like Tito, but pinned by, of all people, Chico Santana. I mean, come on. He could have made it to the end. If I were to do it, have Power and Glory get Hogan counted out or something. Do something to get Hogan out of the freaking ring. That way Warrior can just one time on a big stage have that, have his moment, and then they could move on to whatever they want to do, Hogan and Slaughter, Hogan Warrior, whatever they want to do. But at least it wouldn't kill Power and Glory because you're absolutely right. I mean, they killed the Rockers at SummerSlam. They did well tonight. Where would they be by WrestleMania? Jobbing the LOD in, 20 seconds? I mean, Hogan didn't really give a shit about anybody, and that's fairly clear. I think but the big problem was, if you read all the people's books that from back in that time period, when Hogan was the champ, even though he was killing everyone, and killing finishers and killing all the characters, he was still making so much money that none of them really gave a shit. So no one ever stood up to the guy and said, hey, look, man, can't we just have something? But they were all like, well, we're making so much money when Hogan's on top, we'll do whatever the hell he says. And I mean, there's no doubt Hogan he could command that kind of that kind of, hey, I'm beating you and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no other way around it. I don't know that anyone ever could have said anything besides Vince himself. Who's going to stand up to Hogan? We're lucky that we got the 6-7 months with the Warriors chant. We're fairly lucky for that. We got Mach for a year only because Hogan needed a year off. I mean, what if Hogan didn't take a year off to make No Holds Barred?
Well, even this though was Hogan, for the movie as well. This was Suburban Commando. So again, only taking time off for a movie. Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's so many ways, but hindsight's 20/20. When you look back at it now and you go, well, man, there could have been so much better stuff. I wish Power and Glory had wore those red sunglasses out just one time. They showed it in the opening, and then the guys come out and they don't have them, and I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, those shades are
but
awesome.
like you said with Warrior and Hercules, I thought it was funny too when I watched it this afternoon. I said, man, well they wrestled at WrestleMania 4. Didn't really have too much of a finish. Look how far Warrior came from WrestleMania 4 the last time he wrestled Hercules.
Yeah.
That's huge. He Intercontinental Champion, feuding with Andre, with Rude, then he main event of WrestleMania. I mean, that's pretty big, fairly big. I know a lot of people joke on Warrior and make fun of him and stuff, and he wasn't the best, but I mean, that's a hell of a run to have in between wrestling Hercules, And this would be the Warrior's last big win before losing the title. I don't remember him having a big win after this until the Rumble.
No.
So this,
he does. He moment. Beats. I think he beats Macho Man on a Superstars. Bizarrely enough. But we'll get to that more maybe at the Rumble. But I'm pretty sure he does fight Macho Man at some point on TV and gets a win late in the year.
I thought the grand finale was a good concept. It ended up being a circle jerk for Hogan and Warrior, but I thought it was neat. It was definitely something that they could have done year after year had they not. As long as they don't waste time, they can give this match more than 10 minutes. It's definitely a neat concept to see everyone kind of team up at the end of the show. But I think the reason why they had to do it was, Hogan didn't go over Earthquake strong at all, and Perfect, I love Perfect, but he really wasn't that top guy for Warrior Squash to end the show. You know what I mean? So they had to have something a little bigger than Warrior and Perfect and Hogan and Hootie and the Barbarian. They had to have something to end the show with a bang. I think that's why we didn't see it the next year or the year after that when they could have just kept doing it because it's a neat little concept. But I think they just did it so they can end the show on the bang because they didn't really have anything else.
And just to clarify from earlier, the Warrior Slaughter match was announced on 12/15 for the Rumble.
Wow, so that was a good month build.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and Hogan beats up Slick again because
that's for fun.
Role models. Yeah.
Yeah, all these poor managers, for God's sakes.
And he didn't even do anything this time. It'd be understandable if he got up, like he grabbed the boot or something. But this one particular night, they did nothing wrong besides Brother Love. But, Slick doesn't do anything wrong, gets beat up for it. And yet Hogan's the good guy. Even as a kid, when I started watching in 92, I'm going, he's the good guy? He's throwing Bobby Heenan into cages and beating up Slick and tearing his clothes up. And this is the good guy? This doesn't make sense to me. It's just not logical at all. But,
back
then they didn't care.
Just a clarification, Justin. Earlier you said that Slaughter was DQ'd because he pulled the ref in front of the flying burrito. According to Graham, Slaughter was disqualified because Adnan hit Tito with the Iraqi flag.
I'm pretty sure Slaughter pulled the ref because then they do that whole thing where Slaughter pins him and he thinks he won, and then
because Slaughter.
Jeremy,
gets
you
up
watched
and
earlier today. What was it? Was it the flying burrito?
Yeah. No, it was because of Adnan.
Okay, you know what? I might be thinking of the Showdown match.
Because he put.
I agree with you, Justin. I had this thought. I have this vision in my head too. I have this vision in my head of that whole thing too. It might not be this show though.
Go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jeremy. Go
ahead.
Slaughter puts Tito in a camel clutch, and the referee comes over and taps him on the shoulder. So Slaughter stands up and he does the whole arms in the air. And they announce. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So that wraps up the show itself. Where do you guys stand as far as grade goes? I gave it a C. I think, it's one of those shows similar to the year before where nostalgia-wise, it's fun to watch. A lot of good memories, but when you actually factor in all the booking and the when you put it into context of the time period, it's kind of lackluster. But to me, it's one of those shows that's just, if you want a 3-hour nostalgia trip, it's really fun to watch. But as far as like actual within storylines, it kind of failed.
Yeah, I think at least watch the first couple matches, watch Taker's debut, really that match is the match to enjoy on this show. For the reasons we talked about earlier, the half of the Undertaker's debut and this whole aura about this new guy, and then all the good looks, the good performance by Brett. Other than that, really the show is quite forgettable for me. And I remember my brother brought the program home that night, and that was kind of cool. And I had it for a long time. I don't have it anymore. But other than that, really there's nothing to remember of the show of any real consequence other than that match with Taker's debut and the showcase, between 5 and 10 minutes that Brett got at the end of the match. Other than that, the show really is pretty forgettable.
Yeah, I agree. I give it a B because, I liked it so much as a kid. I still like it now. I think if you're a Hogan and Warrior fan, you're really going to love this. It's going to be one of your favorites. And like you guys said, Undertaker and Brett having their time. Other than that, I mean, it is a pretty ho-hum show, and looking back, knowing what you know about the booking and all that, it can be kind of disappointing to watch. But I think if you're a Hogan Warrior fan, you're going to like it. I still enjoy it now. But I like the Survivor Series concept as a whole. I know a lot of people don't care for it, and a lot of people like, say, the Rumble because of the Rumble match, but I like the team. I like seeing it come down to 3 against 2 or 5 against 2 or, all those little different mashups it can have. And then you see people who, you don't normally see Hogan wrestle the Barbarian.
Right.
You don't normally see like Rick Martel beating up, the Ultimate Warrior. It just doesn't happen too often. So when you get to see those kinds of matches and those matches, they happen, and it's just one of those cool little things. You just, because you don't see it very often, it makes it a little more unique. But I give it a B, and that's because it's one of my personal favorites. So take that with a grain of salt.
All right, so with that, we'll let Scott put that tape back in the vault. And what we're going to do here, like we did for Survivor Series 89, I'm just going to quickly read down what Scott and I had for our year in review. We don't really have to comment too much on it. I'll just kind of read them just for posterity's sake, and then we'll get to our feedback, and then we'll wrap up. So, again, these are all based on just pay-per-views, not overall year, not TV, not house show. This is just our choices for these categories for the pay-per-views of 1990. Match of the year. Obviously, Hogan Warrior Ultimate Challenge was number 1. Heart Foundation Demolition from SummerSlam is number 2. And then number 3, we had a tie. Warrior and Rude from SummerSlam tied with Garvin and Valentine from the Rumble. Feud of the year, we had Hogan Warrior 1, Hogan Earthquake 2, Mr. Perfect Beefcake number 3. Wrestler of the year, we had Warrior 1, obviously he had the biggest year, Perfect 2, and Hogan 3rd. Non-MVP, Dusty Rhodes number 1, Randy Savage 2, and number 3, we had the booking committee for giving Warrior the shaft as champion with his feuds. Got Screwed Award, Brutus Beefcake, obviously, if not for the big injury, he looked like he was primed for a pretty big run. Save the Day, Mr. Perfect. This guy came through, helped carry the mid-card in a big way throughout 1990. Heel of the Year, Earthquake. Face of the Year, Ultimate Warrior. Holy Shit Moments. Number 1 was Hogan losing clean at WrestleMania. Number 2 was the debut of The Undertaker. And number 3, we had Texas Tornado squashing Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam. Tag Team of the Year, Heart Foundation, Demolition, Power and Glory. Comeback of the Year, Big Boss Man for number 1, DiBiase for number 2, and Power and Glory for number 3. Diva of the Year was Sensational Sherry. The Guilty Pleasure Gimmick of the Year was The Model. And the debuts on pay-per-view this year was The Genius, Sapphire, Sato, Tanaka, Kerry Von Erich, Crush, Hawk and Animal, Undertaker, Tugboat, and Sergeant Slaughter. So there you go with that. So any comments quickly on those before I move on to the feedback?
Nope.
No, I thought, when you and I went over these, it was pretty straightforward. There really was no wavering. Everything was pretty cut and dry. We also ranked the pay-per-views. Obviously, WrestleMania, if you listen to our 6 podcast, we gushed over it. Mm-hmm. And then the other 3 shows of the year were kind of just blah. I mean, really, WrestleMania was the show that will be forever remembered for the calendar year of 1990. The rest of the shows were pretty
they all grayed out
average.
Right around the same spot.
Yeah, they're pretty average. But otherwise, really, this was a pretty easy year in review to write. I mean, everything was fairly cut and dry.
Yep. Okay, so hitting up some feedback. Here's the feedback from the Place to Be podcast page. Terry Johnson, love the concept of the Soul Survivors going into the grand finale match. As an aside, I've enjoyed each of your vintage vaults, and I'm all caught up through SummerSlam 90. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate the comments.
Thank you, Terry.
Our buddy Corey Ferreira, the last classic Survivor Series to feature the all-tag match concept. A fine show easily highlighted by the debut of arguably the most intimidating gimmick and character in wrestling history, The Undertaker. J. Arsenio D'Amato, Taker's debut is only memorable moment. Sadly, this pay-per-view symbolizes the end of the late 80s classics. Early 90s, not so much. Jordan McKinnon, it was a subpar show. An interesting twist to add the grand finale match, but the finish was so obvious it lost its appeal. Sad to see the state of Demolition. Axe had clearly packed it in, and he looked awful. Horrible booking to have the big quadruple DQ basically get rid of all the tag teams at once. Debut of The Undertaker is, of course, what the show will always be remembered for, but sort of ruined with its nonsensical elimination. Though it was solid booking to have the entire Visionaries team survive, elevated the guys on that team, and good to do it against a team that was basically bulletproof. Strange to see Sato in the Orient Express match in retrospect. Turns out they had already taped matches with Paul Diamond as part of the team as Kato. Other than Taker's debut, little to remember of the show other than the Gooker. Some dude named Jeremy Nichols said, I'll save my comments on the podcast. I'm a mark for the show. Jason Greenhouse, an average show, the big debut of the Dark Side. By that, I don't mean Greg Valentine's black hair. Gorilla and Roddy were a fun team on commentary. Classic battle between the $1 Million Man and the Hitman at the end of their match. I always liked the grand finale concept. Too bad it didn't last. And, of course, the gobbledygooker. Karen Polland?
The Hot Scott.
I'll let you say it too, Jeremy. Go ahead.
The Hot Scott.
All right. Obviously, the biggest moment to come from this was Undertaker's debut, aside from the gobbledygooker, of course. I have to agree with Jordan that Axe just looked terrible in the ring. After seeing how far Demolition had fallen since WrestleMania 6, it's a damn shame. I like how Piper constantly put over Brett during the match, saying that he's doing it for Dean and such. Taker hit a pretty stiff tombstone on Coco and looked really good. You could tell he had plans for him from the get-go, and Dusty was treated like a jobber here, sadly. Viper Visionaries isn't too bad of a match. Hulkamaniac's National Disasters is okay. I find it interesting Tomo was hardly in the match until getting eliminated. Also, I'm sure Scott is having an aneurysm thinking about Hogan, Duggan, Bossman, and Tugboat all wearing soldiers' uniforms and fighting in the Middle East. Alliance Mercenaries is dull, and there is an insanely long promo from Slaughter before the match while his repetitive entrance music plays. The grand finale match doesn't make sense to me. For one, Tito looked out of place on the face side, and secondly, there are 8 guys in the match and three faces and 5 heels. Couldn't they have added DiBiase or Herc to the other side? Oh, I see what he's saying, to make it even, regardless of alliances. And of course, Gobbledygooker, I have to give him props to Mean Gene for having the balls to grade himself like that.
Well, obviously, 1990 standards, you weren't going to put a heel on a face side. They would do that 5 years later, just putting guys on any teams. But at that point, they weren't going to pull that. They weren't going to do that. That wasn't going to work.
Austin Pfaff. Yes, Survivor Series 90 is a personal favorite of mine. The memorable debut of the big evil himself, the Gobbledygooker. Seriously, though, who knew what impact The Undertaker would go on to have? It's hard to believe he was almost the Eggman. I guess Austin read the same notes I had seen. I also like the Ultimate Survivor match, and it's a shame they didn't keep the idea. The event being in Hartford didn't hurt either. And finally, Dave Hall. Just got through watching the show again in preparation for the review. It was a shame to see how Demolition was treated here. Undertaker's debut was amazing, and Dusty's team made him look like a superstar he had become. Bret Hart and DiBiase have to take the prize for best action of the night. Love the idea of the Visionaries all surviving, even though Martel had done the runner. Santana gets a feel-good reward for years of hard work in a main event spot. Unfortunately, the match could only have one outcome. It was a shame they couldn't get another major heel into that match to set something up with either Hogan or Warrior. Why not get Savage on the card and have him set something up during the last match? Just wish the egg was left off. That was embarrassing. So that's it from the Place to Be page. We have some from Graham's History of WWE Facebook page. Graham himself. Highlight, Bret Hart putting on a star-making performance. Lowlight, Jake the Snake's team going 0 for 4, and the Gooker guy. Chris Hughes, one word, Undertaker. Adam Vidovich. The Undertaker got ripped off. He tagged out and saved Brother Love from Dusty Rhodes and got counted out. Tony Nagel. One of the funniest things of the show is the never-ending Slaughter promo. Imagine yelling at your family for what was like 10 minutes straight with nothing but a drum roll in the background. Patrick Daly. First wrestling pay-per-view I ever ordered. Got every single one, minus the ones I attended in person for the next 10 years. Brett Morgenheim. This is the first pay-per-view I had seen relatively live, and the tape stayed in regular rotation for many years to come. Several of the lines hold a special place in our family, namely the entire Warriors interview. Hawk, I don't know what my thoughts are exactly, and Kerry's, you've seen what Demolition can do. You've seen what Perfect can do. Now you can see what we can do. Are glorious. I remember that promo. It was awful.
Yes.
But when the Warriors started with, I have seen the skeletons that have made the sacrifice, and Mean Gene ending it with very good Ultimate Warrior. Oh my, truly beautiful. Plus, over past 20 years, my brother has consistently asked, why didn't they do a grand finale match of Survival every year? Matt Souza, The Dead Man Cometh. Dave Morrison, the grand finale match, Gorilla and Piper play-by-play, and finding out Warrior and Texas Tornado weren't the same person after all. Dave... Dave Crone, actually, that was more of a rumor in '92 when Warrior came back from being away, that a lot of people thought he was Kerry Von Erich. Dave Crone, used to be Thanksgiving tradition around here. And finally, Jay Hinchy, the debut of the Dead Man, Undertaker, grand finale match of Survival, Ultimate Warrior, LOD, and Tornado on the same team. Brett and $1 Million Man going one-on-one as the last two in their match with Brett, almost pulling off the upset. Gorilla and Hot Rod on commentary, plus who could forget the Gooker. So that's it for feedback. Thank you as always. And Jay, I did get your email taking umbrage to the Atlanta sports scene. We'll get into that next time we do a headline show. I want to let you know I did get it, and we will talk about it. So that's it for feedback. Scott, anything else you want to talk about?
Well, we just want to. I haven't had a chance to do this in a while, but we have for those that enjoy our podcasts, thank you for continuing to listen. If you have not yet, if you're new to the podcasts, there's a few places where you can see some more of our stuff and other places to hear the podcasts. Obviously, you can go to the Podbean page. You can also go to our Facebook page. Just do facebook.com/theplace to. Is it the place to be? Or is it just place?
No, Place to Be Podcast.
Place to Be Podcast. I always wonder if we put the "the" or not and everything. Place to Be Podcast. So facebook.com/, or just put Place to Be Podcast in the search. Please do what your name will get on our show if you have a good comment on any of the topics we discuss, not just Vintage Vaults, but when we talk sports or current wrestling news, anything we talk about, please post your comments on there. Obviously, you can also go to the wonderful site that we have now joined, and that is the historyofwwe.com, our good friend Graham Cawthon. And finally, and we haven't really had a chance to get into this, our podcasts have gotten so chock full of stuff we never get a chance to mention it. For those that are listening, we'd love for you to join our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com. It is a wonderful place to go. It's pretty much the genesis of what we do here, except in writing. We have a lot of great people on there. We talk everything: wrestling, sports, music, movies, TV, video games, just all sorts of great topics. It's not just for wrestling. It's not just for sports, but obviously that's what we talk about for the most part. But we get into some other topics as well. We have plenty of boards, plenty of threads. We have a lot of great tournaments we do, and we do a lot of pick'ems, and we have a lot of fun. So please hop on there if you have not yet. Bigelow34.proboards.com. It's absolutely free, and we'd love for you to join the family and the nation. So just wanted to get those out there because we haven't had a chance to really do that the last few casts because we've gone so long. So the Place to Be Podcast page on Facebook, historywwe.com, and our message board, bigelow34.proboards.com.
So with that, we will start to wrap things up. Of course, thank you, as always, for listening to the Place to Be Podcast. Without you guys, we would be nothing. And, of course, we want to thank our buddy, Jeremy Nichols, for joining us. Hopefully we'll have him on again soon for one of these. What do you think about that, Jeremy?
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was a blast. It was awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pleasure.
Yeah, did a great job. Thank you once again. And, of course, bring us your feedback. We will read it on air. We'll be back next week, hopefully with 2 shows, definitely with Rumble 91, and hopefully with maybe another headlines / Listomania /
something.
I was going to say Curb Your Enthusiasm slurs, but hopefully not. And then, of course, the week after that, we'll be on hiatus as Scott is setting sail. So we will fill you in on that next week. But as for now, thank you for listening, one and all, and we will talk to you next week.
Peace.